Let's have a look at inferential statistics in tacit maths. So inferential statistics, similar to calculus in paper 1, inferential statistics is a guaranteed 50-mark question in paper 2. It's come up every year now, really, since the Leaving Cert has been implemented. So it's obviously one of the most important things, really, that you can do, that you need to have a good grasp of in paper 2. Now, if we look through the worksheet, the most important part of the worksheet really is your exam questions. Okay, now we've about 20 pages worth of exam questions in this worksheet, and like your aim really should be to try and get down to these as quick as we can. Okay, because that's the real indicator as to whether you know this is whether you can do the exam questions. And you have regular Leaving Cert exam questions, and you have a few pre-exam questions there that you might not have seen in other places. But what you'll find is that in nearly all of these 50-mark questions, you will have a hypothesis test at some stage. But the hypothesis test relates, like, to understand how to do a hypothesis test, you really need to have a good knowledge of all the other things. Okay, so there's a kind of a common format really to all of them. What you'll find is the more you practice. So let's look at the main body now of the worksheet, right? So I've divided it into 4 sections: the Empirical Rule, which is kind of the main fundamentals of inferential statistics. That leads on then to z-scores, and it kind of culminates them in the central limit theorem. That would be, in my opinion, the most important part really of understanding inferential statistics. If you can understand the central limit theorem and its 3 applications, the 95% confidence interval, kind of more advanced z-scores, and the one that catches everybody is the p-values. And if you can understand those features, then hypothesis testing then is quite straightforward after that. Now, one small piece of advice in relation to hypothesis test is, and it's something that quite a lot of people overlook, but basically when you're asked to do a hypothesis test, the first thing that you need to do is you need to identify, is it a hypothesis test of a sample mean or a sample proportion? And they're actually 2 different things, right? The structure to both of them is the exact same, but the technique and the formulas that you use are slightly different. And it's something that a lot of people don't actually realize, is that they're 2 separate things. And once you know what to look for in your question, it's actually quite easy to approach it once you've made that decision that it's a proportion or it's a mean. Now, the 4 sections in the worksheet, they actually correspond then to the 4 e-learning modules on the main page, right? So let's say, for example, you want to try the central limit theorem. So this is as I said, the most important bit. Now, as you can see, the notes in this module aren't they don't make much sense really when you're reading it off paper like this. So what you can do is go back to the main page, click on the e-learning module, and when you open the e-learning module, then it basically guides you through that section of the worksheet, right? So the first page in this case, it actually just explains the central limit theorem. And if you go back to the worksheet again, it explains all of this really, and it explains it in a way that I would teach this if I was teaching a class. Okay, and the beauty of it is that it goes through it at your own pace. You click through it. You can fly through it if you want to, but if you don't understand certain things, it breaks it down as simple as possible. Okay, and if you need to go back a step, again, you can go back, etc., etc. Now, as you go on through the module, then and the worksheet, it's all exercises, because really you learn a nice bit just by, let's say, reading stuff, okay? But really the only way that you learn this kind of stuff is actually practicing it out, right? Doing out these worksheets. So really you should be trying to do these yourself, okay? Do as much of it as you can as if you're in a class. And then if you're stuck, or if you just want to check your answers, each of these headings corresponds to a heading corresponds to a page in this e-learning module, right? So let's say you want to go to application 2, z-scores and probability. Then you go to the table of contents, z-scores, and this basically goes through that worksheet. Now, the key thing, as I said, is that you should have made some effort at trying out this worksheet before you go through the solutions. So, as you can see then, there's a module for each of these, okay? And then depending on how well you go through each of these modules, that'll fully prepare you then for the exam questions, as I said, which is the main aim really for you. You should be trying to get down to these exam questions as quick as you can. Okay. Now, finally, when you go back to the main page, when you want the solutions to the exam questions, you simply go to this. So the solutions to the exam questions are in here. It's not exactly interactive. It's just a PDF of the solutions, right? But there's a few notes in there as well. But if you just want to jump straight to, let's say, Leaving Cert 2015, you can click on this and it jumps straight down. And as I said, it gives the solution, but also a few notes there sometimes just to explain what's happening. And the very last thing then is, if you still have further questions after doing all this, then there's a comment section down here, and if you leave a comment there, then I'll be happy to leave a response to explain anything that you still didn't quite understand.